What's up? I'm Ayla.
Hi, I'm Beth Ann.
And this is Let's Talk BL, a boys love podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. It is Sunday, Series Sunday, the day of the week we talk all about one series and one series only, chock full of spoilers. So if you have not watched this show,
what's up, sports fans?
Yeah, you clearly are not a BL fan because literally everyone can't stop talking about this show.
Right. This is all anyone's talking about in the BL community right now, and kind of has been for a really long time. Like even before it dropped, like I remember the weeks leading up to the drop, people were like, it's coming. You guys, like it was a countdown.
Every time the trailer came out, people were like talking about the trailer and very excited. And when it came out, the amount of people who DM'd us that were like, have you watched this? Are you watching this? What are you doing?
And we were like, we're waiting.
Like, it's on the list.
We're like, we have a schedule.
Truly, we have a schedule.
So you're wondering why we look like the cutest rugby players in all of the land. Well, the third and fourth cutest in all of the land.
Yes.
Third and fourth cutest in all of the land.
Because y'all, we're talking Heartstopper.
Heartstopper.
Yes. This is such a fun watch.
It was so sweet. And just, there's so much to get into here. There's so much to get into in here. We're going to get into it. But of course, Beth Ann.
Let's get to the nuts and bolts. It's on Netflix.
Bless.
It's 8 episodes, 30 minutes each. It was a nice quick watch. It was a breeze.
Bingeable if you want to do it over and over and over again. And trust me when I tell you, you do.
Yeah. It stars Kit Connor as Nick Nelson,
a two-named boy. We'll get into that later.
Can't wait. And then Joe Locke as Charlie.
Yeah. These are two protagonists. These are our two main characters. We will, of course, talk about all of the iconic side characters in a bit. But let's start with the synopsis. Truly, the shortest synopsis I've ever had to read my synopsis voice.
I looked for a few different places just to see if something elaborated more. No. It was different iterations of this exact same synopsis. Because,
I still, like, every time I think back to that moment when I, like, just those words echoed in my brain and I'm like looking back and so
continue on.
Synopsis. Teens Charlie and Nick discover their unlikely friendship might be something more as they navigate school and young love.
Classic.
Solid, to the point. Whoever hired this copywriter, good job.
Nice. Yes, it tells me everything I need to know.
Tells you everything.
I mean, it's only 8 episodes, so like potentially don't want to ruin anything.
Right. No spoilers.
Yeah. Like, it's boy and boy love.
Boys and boys love. Shout out Yan for the quote, as per usual.
Gosh, where to even start?
Okay. Here is where we'll start. Let's start with Charlie.
Okay.
Because we're introduced to Charlie first.
What a sweet boy.
Right? He walks in and he's like, and his teacher's like, oh, Charlie, where am I going to put you today? And this is when he walks into the British school. And as someone who, again, I've mentioned that I'm one of those people that's been bullied my whole life because I was always into the thing that, like, it wasn't cool to be into. Yeah. And one of those things for a very long time were, like, teen British TV shows was, like, my thing.
Right.
And so this had very much, like, a twinge of nostalgia for me as I was like,
it's so British.
I was like, British form, like, yes, we're here, we're back at college, as they say, right? And so I was like, this felt very prepped and primed for me because I was like, sweet, I know what's going on, I understand. Compared to, typically on Let's Talk BL, we talk about Asian BLs,
right?
And a lot of that is us having fun learning about a new school system,
right?
This was nice because I really, I went into it and I was like, I know that one. Like,
I know what's happening.
I understand.
Yeah, and another layer to this is the stylization, right, that they use because it is a graphic novel.
A web novel, right.
And so it's fun because they style it as such, which you see a lot in
the leaves, right? The leaves that are everyone. If you are on Twitter, if you have a Twitter account, right? Like, you've seen the leaves in everyone's names.
And the way that they move frames a lot of times, it's like outlined like a graphic novel would be. And like those kinds of things are so fun, which you see in a lot of it. It reminds me of anytime like the kids shows that come from the books. A lot of times they'll use it. Like there's one that I can't think of the name of, but it uses the same kind of format. And so it's like it adds like a sweetness to it that I feel like puts you deeper into this. It's a real story. Like it's a story that you would see in daily life, but it gives it a whimsy that like makes it feel a little
it's very
softer.
real, it's very impactful. And so another thing that I love about just like the introduction of Charlie and who he is that like you see him and you meet him immediately, and he's in this sort of this bad situation with Ben, with this boy, but which we'll get into, but he's very much like he has these reactions that I mean that I still have to this day, but like I remember having as a teenager where like it turns out on the seating chart you're seated next to a cute boy and like you see him see Nick for the first time and you can tell like he doesn't know Nick and he doesn't know that he likes Nick yet and he doesn't like all he knows about Nick is Nick's reputation. But he's like, ooh, I hit the seating chart jackpot, right? Like I got seated next to the cute boy, right? And it's like, and you see him see Nick, and I mean, Joe Locke does an amazing job because, and there's something about, we've talked about this before, actors that can act with their eyes, and not every actor can do it, where you can just see something in their eyes and you know how they're feeling and you feel it. And so like, for example, like Sia does this very well in You're My Sky, right? Like you see Sia acts with his eyes a lot. And so you know how how torn his character is feeling based on his eyes. Apple also does it in You're My Sky. Apple does it a lot in all of her roles. Actually, she's very good at acting with her eyes, right? Like you look in her eyes, like if you to relate it back to a BL that of course we all know and love in You're My Sky. When that moment we talk about a lot when she thinks Dome's gonna kiss her and he doesn't, the only way you know that's gonna happen is you see this look in her eyes. Right? And you're like, oh, and it breaks your heart because you know how she's feeling. You feel how she's feeling.
Is you feel it. Like when they can communicate it without words or over the top action, and it's just like this twinge of like you're it's almost like you're let in on a little secret.
Right. You feel how they're feeling. And so Joe Locke does this beautifully throughout the entire show, but he does it in such a fun way in this very first scene because you see this look in his eyes, and it's this like it's that look that you've seen in your own eyes, you've seen in your friend's eyes, right? That like, ooh, cute boy look, right? Like
And what the other thing I love about Charlie is the fact that he's so grounded. Like he has emotion, he has feelings, right? But he's not trying to figure anything out.
Right. He knows he has already that's already happened to him. And we find out that it's happened in, somewhat of a traumatic way, right? With the previous year, the bullies, right? We know that there's a story there. And then what I like about the development of this relationship is that we see Charlie where he's like, oh, this is a cute boy, but I've got other stuff going on. And what's kind of cool about it is it's this sort of like classic BL trope that if you are a BL fan, you recognize immediately, right? Which is why we love tropes as viewers, because it signals to you what's going to happen in the story. And so when we see that trope, we're like, we get that familiarity, we know what to expect, right? We're ready. And I think that like that's what's cool about this is that it's very different from any other BL because it's a different country. The source material is from a different country, and so, but you see that typical trope of boy who's already in a relationship meets other cute boy. Sexuality status unknown. Right? Which
but
is
also
like
crappy relationship.
Right. And it's a bad relationship. And this is a very bad relationship.
Within 2 seconds.
We talked about this when we watched this.
We see this boy and we both yelled at the screen. We were like, he's bad.
Right.
He's so bad. We hate him so badly.
Ben. And here's the thing is this actor, by all accounts, is like the nicest kid of all time. Like he's a wonderful human.
Yes.
But we both literally he came on screen and we were like, whoever cast this show deserves an award, because we were like, I saw his face and I knew I was supposed to hate him. Like literally he didn't open his mouth. I didn't know what his situation with Charlie was. I didn't have time to like Charlie yet, right? It's early on.
Yeah.
But you see Ben's face on the screen and you know you're supposed to hate him.
Every time
you do.
Every time he does anything and opens his mouth or whatever, we're just yelling no.
We're just like, no.
Like, no. It's just
you shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
Ben, man. And he stays true
consistently
to character.
bad. He's a consistent villain.
He's
not a villain that you wrestle with, that you're like, is he a villain though? No, he's fully a villain.
You know what also makes this a really easy, good watch is that nothing is over dramatized.
Right. It feels like real life. If you kind of like grew up in the Western world,
right,
it feels like real life to you. Like, and that's the other nice thing about this show is it feels like it's very relatable. And I mean, most of these storylines are relatable. Of course, you have those fantastical moments. But particularly this feels very real across every single storyline, which is cool.
Yeah. Ben, every single time I was just like, can we not do this? But what I love about the Ben Charlie of it all is the fact that Charlie stands up for himself
eventually.
He has that incredible moment. Oh my God. Truly, we're not going to get into Kit yet, but man, Kit with the like emotional maturity.
Yeah, when Nick runs in.
When Nick. Oh.
I mean, Kit Connor too, but like,
but when
Nick Nelson, a two-named boy.
Yes, when Nick Nelson sees that Charlie is like acting a little suspicious, and when they have the confrontation with Ben, man, it's like a boy being perceptive and like
he listens,
figuring something out for
Get
himself.
you a man like Nick Nelson.
But it's like in that moment, Nick was teaching Charlie. I mean, the irony, right? Where like Nick still hasn't figured out who he is, but he's teaching Charlie how to be confident in who he is and like stand up for himself, to be like, no, this isn't the thing you want. You've already made that clear. And you've even had it shoved in your face where Ben has a girlfriend. And you're like, the line has been drawn. Like Charlie knows what he wants. He wants a boyfriend. He's already forgiven the fact that like Ben's not ready to come out. Like there's that layer. But like the added layer of like not being exclusive and not actually being his boyfriend in secret, he's like, nah, we're not doing this.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I think, I mean, also in that moment where Nick confronts Ben and Charlie, because right after that we have the conversation where Nick is like, stop saying sorry. And that hit home for me so much, because that's actually a conversation that was had with me as a teenager. Like somebody had to tell me to stop saying sorry, because like every other word out of my mouth was like, I'm so sorry for speaking, which is ironic now because I speak so much. But I mean, that was not who I was, right? Like I felt as though I had to apologize for my existence for a very long time. And so every other word out of my mouth was, I'm sorry. And so like that conversation really hit home to me. And so like for me, what was happening with Nick in that moment to Charlie is he was kind of showing him like, you don't have to give in, right? Like,
you're valid.
Ben is right. Your feelings are valid.
Yeah.
And you not wanting this, that's valid and that's okay. And you don't have to say sorry for not wanting this, right? And he was like physically showing him that.
Yeah. Ugh. And also just Charlie as a character is such a solid guy throughout the entire thing with all of his relationships. Like what I love about him too is that he doesn't let his relationship with Nick Nelson really change who he is. Like he has some conflicts with other characters in the show throughout the show, but
in my opinion,
it's
through
valid.
no doing of his own either.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so it's really nice to see him stay true to himself and never change. I had the same feeling, back to You're My Sky, with San and I.
I was going to draw that comparison too.
San, y'all, San changed my life, honestly. Like, I took so many life lessons from San, and it was one of those things where I held my breath through their entire storyline because I was like, please don't change who this boy is. Like, please don't get to a point in this story where San does something out of character, because I can't handle it. Like, San is perfect. And so when he stays true to character, and the catalyst is that bathroom scene where,
which one?
Where the last one, where I is like, I want to go to Japan, but I also am I want to stay. And he's like, what do you think? And in that moment, San, I need to rewatch the scene because I can't remember the wording, but he's like, do you want me to be dramatic, or do you want me to be practical?
No, he says, do you want the hero answer?
That's right.
Yeah.
Do you want me to, what does he say first? Do you want me to be practical?
He said, do you want the hero answer or
the real answer?
Because the hero answer is the like, is
I
the
can
first
wait for
opportunity.
You. Yeah.
Is the first thing he offers. Yeah.
He's like, I can wait for you. You should definitely take this. It's a great opportunity.
Or
he
do
was
you
like,
want me to be selfish? Maybe, I think is the other thing.
And then
said,
he's like, but no, I want you.
But
to
I want
stay.
you to stay. I'll miss you.
Yeah.
I love you. Like,
oh my God, that scene kills me.
I mean, look, actually, like, talk about a golden retriever of a character. Boom to Newt.
Oh my God.
This is not a You're My Sky podcast.
Go through it. Yeah. So it's one of those things where Charlie stays very true to himself, which I think is the return for his character to Nick Nelson, where Charlie is already completely okay with his sexuality, with who he is. And so he can show Nick then it's okay to like what you like and to be who you are. And that's never, it's going to be hard at points, and it's going to be in opposition to what other people think and feel and want from you. But it's okay to be like, no, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. And if you don't like it, then maybe you should go away.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other really nice thing about Charlie as a character is that he also feels very relatable, because even though, like you said, he knows who he is, he knows what he wants, right? He understands his sexuality in a way that, not a lot of other 14 going on 15-year-olds do.
The age.
And so, but at the same time, he's very real, because he has these insecurities, and he has these moments of self-doubt, and he has these moments of like, should I even exist? Right? He still has those moments. So he's not a like, rah, rah, I'm the best. No one can touch me.
He's not
I'm
happy-go-lucky.
Well, it's less about being happy-go-lucky and more about that sort of like unearned confidence, maybe, I guess is how I would call it.
San's pretty happy-go-lucky.
Is this like, I am who I am, and if you don't like it, you can go away, and I'm perfect, and like, I shouldn't apologize for who I am. He has these moments that you get to see as a viewer that we all have, where he does have these moments of doubt, and that's real.
And insecurity.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that there is something like a little damaging to showing characters that are that way, that like, I'm perfect and you can't bring me down, and like, I am who I am, and because for people who do have those moments of self-doubt, it feels very invalidating. It's like, oh, should I be that? Like, what am I doing wrong that I can't get there?
Right.
And it's like, no, you're not doing anything wrong, because that's real.
Everyone
right? Like, those feelings you're feeling are real.
Yeah.
And this whole, like, this idea of, you're perfect and no one ever, like, you shouldn't ever doubt yourself. Right? Like, that's not real.
Yeah.
Okay. And Charlie has those moments.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So let's talk about Nick Nelson.
A two-named boy.
Truly.
Our two-named rugby playing boy.
What a sweet boy.
What a sweet.
This casting was on point.
Sweet boy. And I mean, that line, the iconic line that we all know and love of, he looks like a golden retriever. No, he doesn't. Okay, he does a bit. He does a bit.
Oh, he's just so cute.
He's just so cute. He's just so sweet and fluffy and genuine. And he listens.
And he communicates.
No, he listens and he speaks. Not true. Only does he listen, but he speaks. Yeah. I mean, we love a man that can speak.
Yes.
People want to talk to him.
It's true. I just feel like, that's how you figure it out, is that you speak, right?
Yeah.
Like, therapy is important, people, if you're going through something and you can't figure something out, and if you don't have like a close friend that you can really open up and talk to, therapy is a great option because that lets you communicate and speak out loud and think through what you're going through. And
and even when he has these moments of Nick Nelson, a two-named boy, we love to see a two-named boy. Yes. We love a two-named boy in our lives. Good. He, even when he's going through something, because I remember we both held our breaths. So we watched this whole thing together, which doesn't happen super often for us for shows, actually, because we like kind of live, like we live together, but we live on different schedules and like, you know, whatever. I think the last one we watched entirely together was either You're My Sky or The Tuxedo. I think we like didn't skip an episode. Like we always watched it together.
I think You're My Sky we watched together the whole thing. Because The Tuxedo, there was one episode that I had to watch separately.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, so You're My Sky was the last one we watched all the way together. Yeah. So it actually, that's what I mean by like we've watched like what 4 shows since then. Yeah. It doesn't happen that often. Right. And so we watched this one entirely together. And we both held our breaths in that moment in the room upstairs at the party when they kissed for the first time. And we both we're like chanting. We're like Nia in Star in My Mind Under the Covers chanting. But instead of like chanting to keep ghosts away, we're like, don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out. Like we're like, please, 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 Nick Nelson, don't freak out. Like, don't get scared. Don't get scared. Like we're just like chanting, and then we hear the boys in the hallway and we're like, no, and like we're both just screaming, we're like, no, please, no,
because that's truly one of my least favorite tropes is when a character is like, oh, I don't know why I kissed you, or I'm sorry I kissed you, or that was a mistake, and then we have this whole story arc of like
he's like, I don't remember it, or it didn't mean anything. Yeah. Right?
Like it didn't mean anything. Oh, it didn't mean anything to me. And then we have like a 10 steps back situation. Right. Where it's like
we have to retrace our steps. And so when ridiculous. He goes back in that room and Charlie's gone, it broke my heart for so many reasons because he was coming back. He was coming back to him to not freak out. But then Charlie was freaking out. And I was like, Charlie, no. But I was like, Charlie, I understand because like he left him and what was he supposed to think, right?
Yeah.
And so I understood both of their perspectives. And it's been a long time since I've watched a show and been like, I get where they're both. The last one was It's A, where I was like, I can't be mad at either one of the. And I told Sunset About You, not about it. And I Promised You the Moon. Different show, my friends. Yeah. But the last one that I can remember thinking I cannot be mad at either side here was I Told Sunset About You, because I understood why they both were perceiving the situation, how they were perceiving it. Yeah. And both sides had valid feelings, in my opinion. And so it was a little upsetting, but the wonderful thing about Nick Nelson is the man communicates. He speaks because the next day we get these. I can't decide for me, is it the most magical scene in the show or is the snow the most magical scene in the show? I can't decide. This is one of the top 2, tied for the top magical scene in the show.
Yeah.
Where Nick Nelson runs in the rain to Charlie's house and Charlie's like, he does the thing we all did as kids. Let's get in my room. Let's go to my room.
Yeah. We don't want my parents to hear us.
And he's freaking out and he's like, I'm sorry for kissing you. I just really want to still stay friends. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have pushed that on you. Right? Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't mean to make you feel pressured when I asked you if you wanted to kiss me. Right? And Nick Nelson, a sweet angel of a child, he kisses him and he's like, no. And he explains himself, right? He's going through something, but he explains what he's going through.
Take note, Dome.
When I tell you, this is so iconic in the world of BL. And this is why, like, there's been conversation, is this BL? Is it not BL? We've discussed this before, like, what is BL, right?
Yeah.
Our joke was, well, the number one way you know this isn't a BL is they actually communicate, right? Like, this is something that is entirely missing in every other BL that we have discussed on Let's Talk BL, which is he's going through something, but he tells the person what he's going through, and he asks for more time.
Talk about healthy communication
from a 15-year-old.
Truly, there's a show I'm watching now that both couples, I'm just like, every episode I'm like, just tell him.
Dark Blue Kiss. I mean, DBK is like my go-to. If he had opened his mouth and spoke the words, we wouldn't have had a show.
It's true. But this goes to show you
can still have a show.
You can communicate and still have a show because you have a ton of other shitty people who create drama.
So I will say, I love the tropes we get so much in the development of Nick and Charlie's relationship because it's so familiar on so many different levels. So we get a pinky touch. We love a pinky touch. We get a beach frolic.
Beautiful.
We love a beach frolic.
Yeah.
A beach frolic. A
pebble
touch.
A pebble beach frolic.
I know. It's a pier frolic.
So stinging cute. Yeah, there's just so much sweetness in the development of these two characters in this couple, because Charlie gives room to Nick to figure himself out without inserting too much of his own personal questioning and frustrations with, like, because Charlie's going through it
amount
too.
Of time it's taking, right?
Yeah,
and because of the strife that
he's going through,
it's causing,
right.
And
so it's just nice to see,
or not that it's causing, but is a side effect of what's going on. Because I hate to say that him figuring out is causing it, because it's actually not Nick or Charlie at all.
No,
it's everyone else,
because they're communicating very clearly with each other up until episode 7.
Well, and either of them and anyone in this world.
Yeah.
If you are trying to figure something out in your life and it's causing you to develop as a person, to grow as a person, and that causes problem, and people in your life take that negatively, and then there are negative consequences or side effects because of that, it's not your fault. And that's on them.
And more often than not, it means you're doing something right.
Right.
If it's not harming another person and you're working through something, you're doing something right.
So all of the negative side effects that happen in this show, right? The fights with Harry, the physical fights.
They're shitty friends.
Honestly, Tao's reaction to things, none of that is on Nick. None of that is on Charlie.
No.
That's on them. That's on Harry and Tao and all of those, and the lads, right? Yeah. It's been a while since I've watched a show with like lads. And they even, I think, talk about getting, like, they don't say it in this phrase, but like getting a cheeky Nando's, which, like, if you're a fan of like British teen TV shows and like, you know, about like lads, so like getting a cheeky Nando's, it's like a thing. And I was like, oh, it's been a while. It's been a hot minute since I was in this world, and I kind of miss it.
But yeah, so I just love how it's funny too at the end where Nick fully stops the game and goes after Charlie. I was like, we're getting the classic teen movie trope where at the end of the movie, where like at the end of whatever the sports movie
they have the trophy, but they're not interested in the trophy. They're interested in the love interest.
Yeah. They like kiss in the field. Nick was like, I'm not waiting for the end of the game. He's like, I'm going to get my boy.
I need to go get my man. And like, yes, Nick Nelson. This is why you have 2 names.
Also, love the fact that they're not doing it in the crowd of people. They go to the hallway.
They're perfect. I love them. I mean,
they're so cute.
And I mean, I genuinely like, I love just sort of like immersing myself in shows. And even though like all of this was so familiar to me, like the teen British drama of it all, the BL of it all, right? Like all of that of it all was so familiar to me. I did learn something new.
Yeah.
I decided, I was like, I need to understand this rugby situation, because the rugby plays such a big part in the show because which is what I think we're about to get into. Charlie and his relationship with his friends starts changing.
Right.
And they hang it on the fact that he's joined the rugby team.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, and a big part of Charlie and Nick's relationship development and like Charlie's position in the school and in the friend group all sort of starts developing as a result of the rugby. And we see Charlie really commit to like wanting to join and be a part of this like team in a way that he's never done before, which is a big step, right? Like he always saw himself as an outcast, and now he was joining a team. That's personal growth and development, right?
I mean, the confidence that he has to go into that locker room, like you were very much like,
I was like, that's a brave boy.
Yeah.
I think I literally said I would have turned around.
Intimidating. Yeah.
But I mean, the part where he's practicing and he decides he's going to figure out the tackle. And when he goes and plays that game, in fact, it was a super funny moment in the rugby game against St. John's. When they walk out, you make a comment and then Charlie makes the exact same comment, like word for word. You were like, those are adults. And then Charlie literally says to Nick, why are they full grown men?
It's true. I feel like that any comical sports movie, a lot of times that happens at some point in the movie where one team are like the underdogs and the other team they're playing against are gigantic.
Yeah. But I mean, rugby is like fascinating.
It happened in You're My Sky with the basketball team, right? The other basketball team were like full adults.
I mean, I love the variety in the sports that this gives me because it's not basketball.
Yeah.
And it was a sport I don't know. So I actually really like sports. Like I think I've talked before about how I used to have a soccer podcast. Like I was super, super into soccer.
Have you ever been to a rugby game?
I have never been to a rugby game. And like I worked in soccer, like professionally. I worked in soccer. Like I've been down on the field. I've been to cup games. I have jerseys in my closet that are like game worn jerseys. Like I love soccer, and so like I'm a big soccer person, so I know all the soccer rules. And soccer and rugby tend to like in the States kind of go hand. They're both sort of seen as like the European sports, right? So like they tend to kind of like get some overlap. But I was never into rugby, and similarly like watched You're My Sky, and like people before have tried to teach me basketball, and I'm familiar now enough, like I know the rules, I understand all the stuff, and like I know American football. I got raised on American football. My dad taught me American football. Like I know all, but rugby is a sport that I've never tried to learn or understand before, and so I was fascinated with that aspect of it, of like the rugby of it all. I was like, I want to learn how this game works because it looks chaotic, right? If you're watching it, you're like, this has 0 rules. In fact, this has negative rules. I think that this game takes rules and is like, here are some rules that you have to break, otherwise you lose the game, right? That's what it looks like if you're just watching rugby. But I was like, no, it's a game. There have to be rules. How do you score? How do you win?
Because it's like,
what's a foul? What's not a foul?
Without the pads. And that just seems like chaos.
But then you can use your feet, so it's also like soccer, and there are goalposts, and like there's a lot going on. And so I was like, I'm gonna learn rugby, and I looked it up, and I read some articles, and then
figured it out.
I posted on our Instagram stories. I was like, if you know rugby,
so many helpful listeners. I
was like, if you know rugby, please DM me. I want to understand rugby. I genuinely want to understand rugby, and like we got a few different DMs, and then we got like a
friend of the podcast.
Yeah. I'm like, how do I explain this? How do I explain this? DM'd and was like, I got you. And I was like, okay, I have a list. And I sent my list of questions that was based on like what other listeners had tried to explain to me. And so between just like the rugby community, the BL rugby community,
truly the overlap,
I think I get rugby now. I genuinely think I do. And I watched a couple games. They're long.
I don't know any of the like rules or details, but I've been to some rugby matches. I had a friend in college who played rugby, which is intimidating when you show up to a rugby match because it's like usually adults playing like for fun. And so there's just like a line of ambulances and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen here, but it's going to be crazy.
Someone described to me because I was asking, I was like, okay, because from like as a soccer, like most of my base in sports is actually soccer.
Right.
And so I was like, how do you draw a foul then if tackling is allowed, right? Like in hockey, how like it's a contact sport, and in American football, it's a contact sport.
Right.
So there's certain kinds of contact that are allowed or not allowed.
Right.
So that's what I first wanted to understand was like, how do you draw a penalty? Like, how do you draw a foul and then get a penalty? And a listener described it to me as, you can't fatally tackle someone.
Yeah, I love that one.
And like, I was like, oh, so like if you murder someone, then it's a foul, which like respect.
If the ambulance doors opens, you know that
it's a foul.
Yeah.
No, and then someone else described to me, hold on, I will read to you what they said, because this was the one that I felt like actually made the most sense. That I was like, oh.
I wonder where in the States rugby is the most popular.
Yeah.
I wonder, because in the South, I hear a lot of people talking about rugby. Like the people that I've known that have played rugby, it's like big in the South.
Okay. Any tackle that's above your chest is seen as dangerous.
Interesting.
Yeah. No one else had described it to me that way until this person. And I was like, oh, okay.
You can't clothesline a person.
I was like, that makes sense, right? It's like, because I was like, what? Because like in soccer, right? Like you can't go cleats up at someone, right? Like you can't, I don't know how, yeah, like you can't go studs up.
Right.
And so like, that's a thing, right? It's like, understood, studs are up, that's a card.
Yeah.
Right. And so when it's described as like any tackle above the chest, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And if you getting back into Heartstopper,
right,
that tackle that happens in the St. John's game, right, where Charlie gets hurt, is like his face is messed up.
Yeah.
So like that, like he legitimately got fouled in that game.
Oh, yeah. That moment too, where Nick is just kind of standing there paralyzed, because validly, like, this boy that he really likes got hurt and he like doesn't know what to do, but all their friends are there and they haven't told most of them about their relationship. And he's like, what do I do? Like, I want to be,
do I touch him?
But like,
yeah.
You like really feel the conflict in that moment.
This show, I mean, it's great. So like, yeah, even though so much of this was familiar, it's like you learn something new every day.
Yeah. Are you gonna go watch some rugby?
Yeah, probably. I like sports. I mean, I don't know if I'll go watch it in real life, but I'll watch like I was suggested to watch World Cup games. So I think that's the ticket. That's how I got into soccer. Actually, when I very first got into soccer, it was a World Cup year.
Actually, one of my good friends in Alabama, he was on a gay rugby team.
It's amazing.
It's pretty fun. Okay, let's talk Friends.
The Friends. There's a lot to unpack here.
Let's start with the rugby team, because that's what we were on.
The lads, if you will.
I do really appreciate Nick's maturity, because you don't see this a lot in high school dramas where they realize they have really shitty friends.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's true of a lot of people in high school, where you're like, oh, I was a bad friend and like a bad person because of the like stupid things that I was doing because of the people that I was hanging out with.
I say a lot, I'm like, teenage Ayla.
And the emotional maturity it takes to recognize that like this boy that you like, who's very different from you, is actually teaching you like actual life lessons, probably before you would realize them in reality. Like the emotional maturity, because he's not acting out at his friends out of insecurity for like who Nick is discovering that he is. He's acting out because these friends are in exact opposition to the person that he's realizing he is, and that like he knows that who he is isn't a bad thing, that his friends are the bad thing. And the emotional maturity, I mean, sure, they fight and they like get into it in unhealthy ways a lot of times. But he was like, you suck.
I feel like only one unhealthy time, which is when they get in the fist fight.
Right.
Everywhere else, Nick, again, something that we've learned about Nick Nelson, a two-named boy, always trust a two-named boy, I feel like, is if people refer to someone as two names, right? Their first name and their last name. No, their first name and their last name.
I'm perfect.
No, their first name and their last name. You can trust them. If somebody is referred to by their full name, just always by everyone, trustworthy.
Y'all, if you understood the irony of what Ayla is saying right now, your mind would be blown. Yes, the irony.
Irony?
Yes, the irony.
There are a lot of times you say things and I'm just like, okay.
You just said you should trust a two-named boy.
Well, okay, so technically every boy is two-named, I suppose. Technically every boy has two names.
Anyways, continue.
So, Nick Nelson, a lot of the times with Nick Nelson, the fist fight, right, unhealthy. Yeah. But He flat out says to his friend at one point, he was like, what you just said is homophobic and that's not okay. And he walks away. And that's exactly how you're supposed to handle situations like that. So actually, and something that we know about Nick is that he communicates, he speaks, right? And so like, actually most of his confrontations with his friends are super healthy, especially the way that he navigates Imogen. I'm really impressed with the way that he navigates Imogen because he almost slips up.
Yeah.
He has this very like boy moment,
right,
where you're like, oh, he's gonna be a boy about this.
He's pulling a full
Cow.
I still haven't memorized who's who. He's pulling a full new from Dark Blue Kiss.
Cow.
Where he's trying to be nice. He's trying to be the nice boy, and he's not saying the thing he needs to say immediately.
Right.
He's trying to spare feelings, which we know in the long run never actually spares feelings.
Well, and we pretty immediately, so before she even asks him out on that date at the rugby match, she walks up to him in the hall and like says something, because so of course at the party she's told him, I like you don't have to say anything right now, I just want you to know I like you.
That is
which is such a BL trope,
classic like just Asian drama trope. I have never been introduced to that trope until I started watching like K-dramas and Thai dramas, where it's like, I'll love you enough for both of us, or I'll love you until you love me.
Until you love me. I'll love you until you love me.
We have in the West.
Yeah.
Ever.
But so he knows, right? He understands. And there's a moment where she like walks up to him at some point, and we both immediately, I remember we go, you gotta tell her, dude. Yeah. Like we both were just like, you gotta tell her. Yeah. Because, and that's one of the great things about this show is every single character here represents someone's real life experience. Yeah. Right? In the across the entire show, right, this represents someone's real life. Like you're watching the show, you will see yourself in at least one of these characters. Yeah. Right? So even if you're not a queer person and you didn't go through like some of these exact same things in high school, probably if you're watching this, like maybe you relate to Imogen then, right? Yeah. Or maybe you relate to like Ben, right? Maybe you were the one that was trying to figure yourself out and you acted shitty. Yeah. You know? So like I feel like that's the other nice thing about the show is every character in this show is someone's real life experience. But so Imogen,
and the great thing about Imogen too is that like you never fully hate her, right?
No,
like when
she didn't do anything wrong.
When she was first introduced, we're always like, is she going to be a villain?
Is she going to? Yeah.
And I think in this, because we learned a lot from Pan, we learned a lot from the girl in the tuxedo, is that like the girls don't, it's not all or nothing. It's like she can feel hurt and wounded by a situation, and the longer it takes for the boy to come out and be truthful, real, the less of a fool she's gonna make of herself and the less hurt she's gonna feel.
Not that she's gonna make of herself, but the less of a fool she's going to feel.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, it's not that she's making a fool of herself if she doesn't have access to all of the information.
Right.
And so before she even asks him out, we both were like, oh, you gotta tell her, dude. Because this is Nick Nelson's one flaw.
Right.
For sure. And so she asks him out, and we both, I remember we were like, come on, dude. No. And he says yes.
Yeah.
And to be fair, to be honest with you, if he had said no, I actually think that would have been worse.
Yeah.
I think him saying yes in front of the group of friends, like that was the right thing to do for him and for her.
Right.
Right. And then like, you almost can't be mad at him because her dog dies, right? Like he's ready to tell her.
Is excellent.
He's ready to tell her. He's like, Imogen, we need to talk. And then she's crying, and he's like, wait, what's wrong? And she's like, my dog died. How are you supposed to dump a girl when her dog died?
The best part is this created the catalyst for him to bring Nellie.
Yes, everyone's emotional support animal. Nellie is my emotional support animal now.
The dog was so sweet.
So sweet.
And the fact that like he brings the dog as like a buffer of like, I'm gonna dump you, but look at this cute dog. I love that so much. And in the end, when she realizes, oh, this boy likes a boy right now, it's very sweet because she has like just like this very just like chill reaction. Like she doesn't look hurt, she doesn't look upset. She just is like, cool.
She looks like, oh, this makes sense now. She's like, oh, I get it. Yeah. Right. And again, this is, I hate to say it, but this is what Dome and we could have been. This is what we could have had. This is what we could have had. Now. This is what we could have had if he were to speak. And Nick Nelson speaks, and he's a golden retriever of a human, and we love him, and he's perfect.
But as we know, Dome does not have the emotional maturity as Nick Nelson, so probably best that he didn't speak.
But if he had spoken, would that have given him emotional maturity?
No, because he would have said all the wrong things.
I would say, how do you know? Maybe we should ask Chris, but we tried that.
No.
We tried that.
It's best to be left. Okay, the other bad friend. I literally, in the guide,
I can see it now.
I wrote Tao in all caps. Bad friend.
Yeah, I don't know. Is this a hot take? I think this might be a hot take.
Oh, he's the worst.
Tell us in the comments if you think this is a hot take. We both think Tao's a really bad friend. We agree he's a bad friend.
You had a great kind of explanation of who he is as a character with the fact that he's like a little bit right about who Nick Nelson is, but also very wrong, and is trying to force this narrative on who Nick Nelson is just to prove himself right, not to look out for Charlie.
No.
But to prove himself right in this situation. And like, of course, throughout the Nick Nelson discovering who he is, he's going to be right at certain points, but like Nick has growth and Nick is a human and he's going to make mistakes. But like,
and also Tao doesn't see the full picture.
Yeah.
And that's what's frustrating. That was what was frustrating for me watching Tao, is that he had, like you said, he had this narrative about Nick Nelson and he decided he was right about Nick Nelson.
Yeah.
And when people didn't agree with his narrative of Nick Nelson, he said he got mad.
Right.
And he said he the entire time, all he wanted to do was force people to agree with him. And he did it under the guise of like, I'm protecting my friend.
Yeah.
But it was never only about protecting Charlie. It was always rooted in Tao being right about something, and in Tao's fear, and in Tao's insecurity. Right. It was never actually rooted in protecting Charlie.
Because you can see it a little at the beginning where he's harping on the fact that Elle is now at
the girls' school,
Higgs.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's like, I don't like change, right? Like he keeps buying her drink and
he's like, Nick is stealing Charlie. I hate when people talk about people like this.
Yeah.
Humans are not objects.
No.
Right? You don't own Nick cannot steal Charlie because Charlie is not an object to be taken or given.
Right.
Charlie is a human with thoughts and feelings and opinions, and like he is a being.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I do. I will say, like, Tao had his moments where, like, again, this show is so good in that it doesn't over dramatize certain things. Like, I got real nervous about that confrontation in the bathroom at the bowling alley with Charlie and Tao, because he's very much being like, Nick's a bad person. Nick owes you this. Nick this, Nick that. And Charlie's like, dude, you can just tell me that like you're a good friend and you're worried for me, and that like you're gonna kill him if he hurts my feelings. And I do love that moment because Tao's like, I mean, I'll just send him a badly worded DM, but murder works too.
Yeah.
And then when they leave that bathroom and it doesn't create drama for Nick and Charlie, where Nick is just like, just hugs him.
Yeah.
In that moment where he's like, I'm sorry that we're
both
like
causing problems,
dealing with conflict in our own lives in our own ways. And like Nick's dealing with stuff with his friends as much as Charlie's dealing with stuff with his friends in very different ways. And like the emotional maturity
of a 14-year-old and 15-year-old. It's God. Wild. Yeah. I mean, I just think overall Tao is a bad friend. I think that he also gets really mad at Charlie for not telling him about Nick, but he refuses to acknowledge his part in that because yes, Charlie was wrong for that. Charlie was wrong for telling everyone else, but more so wrong for asking them to keep it a secret from their other friend, right? He in that moment put their friends in a very awkward position, but Tao never took responsibility for like his role in making Charlie feel as though he couldn't come to him. Right? So like Tao's bad friend. On the other side, Elle is a perfect friend. She's wonderful.
Yeah.
I I love her. She's so funny.
It was so nice to kind of see this, like, again, the sweetness in the show of Elle befriending Tara and Darcy, and just like their camaraderie throughout the whole show of like, here's how healthy emotional teenagers can meet someone new and different and learn about them and get to know them and share things about themselves and really develop an intimacy that is like safe and like healthy. And
I also love when she has this great moment with them when Tara and Darcy are trying to like fix her up with Tao because she's told them like, hey, I think I like Tao.
Yeah.
And she's basically like, you did this without my consent and that's not okay.
Yeah.
Right? But they stay friends.
Yeah.
But she's like, listen, just because you guys are ready to do this, I'm not ready. Right? I know that you think I should want this and that you think this should be my next logical step, but I'm not ready for this next logical step. I mean, it's all just so healthy. This show is just so healthy.
It's so true. And I think it gives you great examples of every kind of spot on the spectrum of how to deal with a situation. Because you have like the far end of Ben, who's like, whew,
he is the worst.
He's going through something, and
do not be like Ben.
And there's
don't
no
do what Ben
do. Of like he's just going through something, and he should not be around other people. And then you have Nick, who's going through something but like able to figure his crap out and be a decent human while he's going through the thing.
I mean, Nick Nelson, perfect. Is there a more perfect BL character than Nick Nelson? Can you think of one?
San
and Nick Nelson.
I mean, because San does go through things. Like he also gets frustrated.
He throws a little fit,
but he
communicates
to Wee. He has his conversation with Wee, and like
Wee seeks him out.
Yeah.
See, for me, Wee would be up there if it weren't for the dome of it all. Because like he did have a part in that. But Wee is like a good person. But no, San, Nick Nelson, who else? Is there more? I think I'm willing to say I think Nick Nelson is the most perfect character in BL.
I would argue Leon from Don't Say No.
No. Because Leon treats Leon. Oh.
Because when he realizes
Leon's
he likes Pop, he
good.
like lets the girl go. He's like, no, thank you. He's been told that he's a playboy, but like we never actually see it because he meets Pop and immediately is like, I like this boy. I'm fully committed to him. I'm going to let him go pursue his dreams. I'm going to suffer alone. Like, yeah.
And he never like pressures him or rushes him or gets pressure. Yeah.
Did
okay.
I just blow your mind?
Okay. Nick Nelson, San, Leon.
Yeah.
Are there any others?
Maybe gameplay and ingredients. He's a pretty sweet boy. But there's not a ton of drama to like go through. No, because he doesn't
communicate well.
Right.
He's poor communication.
He's just cooking in the kitchen.
Right. He's just really cute. Like, which is a valid reason to be a perfect BL boy.
It's true.
But like, no.
Are there any others? I don't think there are.
I don't think so. Not that I can
Tell
think
us
of.
if you can think of a perfect BL
Think of a
character.
perfect BL boy.
Yeah.
We got Nick Nelson from Heartstopper, San from You're My Sky, and Leon from Don't Say No. Who you got? Put it in the comments.
The emotional maturity. It's just...
So let's talk about Tara and Darcy just very briefly because we're starting to run out of time on this series Sunday.
Yeah.
I wish we had more time. This could be an 85-parter. Tara and Darcy are really cool because they're already established, and what we're seeing is not the establishment of their relationship, but the sharing of their relationship with the world.
Yeah.
And I really love the comment that Tara makes when she's chatting with Nick at the party. Mm-hmm. And she says, and I think this is so valid, and I think that it's something we don't see a lot, right? People now expect you to make a grand statement about your sexuality, and I don't think that's fair because not everybody feels comfortable doing that.
Right.
Because not everybody feels comfortable sharing lots of details about their lives.
And the Love Simon of it all, where it's like, we should get to a place in society because like you want equality. Straight people never have to come out. Like, it's wild to me that like you have to announce who you're banging.
And a lot of times it's like it's seen as less valid until you come out, or that you didn't, like, oh, you never came out, your experience is less valid.
Right.
And I think that's really unfair because there's so many different kinds of people in this world, and nobody should have to make some big, loud, grand gesture about themselves for the sake of being seen as valid.
I fully joke that, like, I will be married and be like, hey guys, here's my husband. Like, that same thing of like,
but I mean,
your relationship
like
is no one else's.
On the sexuality of it all, right? Like, regardless, outside of the relationship of it, is a lot of times like a person's sexuality is not seen as valid if they haven't come out, if they haven't like had some grand gesture. And some people, I just don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair.
No.
And so when Tara is having that conversation with Nick, where she's like, we don't want to make some grand, you know, sweeping gesture, right? Where we come out.
Right.
She's like, but we want to be together in public.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to figure out how to navigate that line of like, how do I not get stuck in this, like, this thing that I don't really want to do that makes me feel uncomfortable, but still publicly have my relationship, and watching them navigate it and do it healthily in their own relationship. And they do have conflict and they solve it, you know, it's like, it's a really cool story to watch.
And the show also shows you kind of what people who do come out, even subtly, like posting an Instagram photo that says like girlfriend, and the fact that people then feel like they need to comment on it in ways
feel
that's
that they
like
have any
opinion, where they're like, oh, what a shame, like, oh, like, you don't look like a lesbian. Like, there's so many things where you're like, what? Like, that's such, it's so wild that people take the time to make those comments and like feel that like they have some type of input into what this girl's life experience is. And so, I think it
well, and that comment in the recital, the like, you know, don't look at her, you'll catch lesbian. Like, that stuff happens. That's real and that's valid, even now, even in 2022, right? Like, and so like the fact that they're showing that and that it hurts, and that again, it's not all rah rah, I am who I am. You know, that there are those moments where it's like, even though Tara understands that like that's not an okay thing to say, and that it's not real and it doesn't reflect most people, it still hurts. And I think it's like, it's a real lesson for like, don't say things just off the cusp, you know, especially if, again, if you're discussing someone else's personality, sexuality, right? Like anything about them, you as a separate human have no input on that.
You don't deal with the consequences of literally anything in their life.
Like, I think it's really important to like be mindful of other people's feelings, even if you think those feelings aren't valid, or that like people should be responsible for their own feelings, because you're right, people should be responsible for their own feelings. But I think in a society, we all have responsibility to each other to at least either A, not purposely hurt another person's feelings, and B, if we find out that we've hurt another person's feelings, to apologize, to fix it. Even if you feel like, oh, that's not my fault, or I can't control how you perceive what, that's my favorite one. I can't control how you perceive what I say. That's a cop out. Right? Like, in a society, you have a responsibility. If you find out something that you've said or done, even, you know, accidentally, you didn't mean it that way, has hurt someone, it's your responsibility to say, I'm sorry. You know, that wasn't my intention. How can I make this better?
Yeah, this is such a nice couple. And this also, it's nice that they become a safe place for Nick to kind of figure things out too. Like, that's such a sweet,
they're so supportive
relationship and dynamic to see. So there are such good friends, and there are such bad friends.
I mean, this show,
it's so sweet,
so great.
This
is the first Western BL we have discussed on Let's Talk BL.
I know. I hope there's a second season. I would love to see more of these characters.
I mean, the second season, based on my guess, I haven't read the web novels or books, is Tao and Elle, right? They set that up at the end with the butterflies.
Yeah. I don't know anything about these books.
We'll see.
Yeah. We have merch.
You can buy it if you want to buy it.
Yes.
Come talk to us about rugby now. This is my thing now. I'm telling you, this is gonna be my thing. Rugby. This is gonna be my thing. Okay. I'm learning the rugby. People.
Next stop, rugby match. Let's talk BL.
Let's talk BL. Who's gonna play rugby with me? Who's gonna like teach me how to play it?
I mean, I know some
rugby. Okay. Come talk to us about rugby. Yes. And in the meantime, this has been Let's Talk BL. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and keep up with all things Let's Talk BL at Let's Talk BL.
See you next time.